Hi, Joel Dolcher here from Credit Counseling of Arkansas. I'm here to walk you through one of the segments in our Your Money, Your Goals series of workshops to help you get a better handle on some of personal finance issues that you might be trying to address. The topic that I'm dealing with is dealing with debt. Debt is something that a lot of people face. It's the inevitable product of using credit. Credit is simply the immediate access to goods or services with a promise to pay on them later over time. And that can be a real useful tool. Think about things like buying a car or buying a house. Very few of us could ever come up with the money in cash in order to make that complete purchase up front. And so what we have to do is use credit in order to pay that out over time. But we get immediate access to that good or a service. And that's wonderful. The problem arises, though, when people get into too much debt. And so once that happens, and it's kind of a slow slope that you fall into, once it happens, you've got to figure out a plan to get out of that debt. And I'm here to talk about some tools today that come from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB's series on Your Money, Your Goals. And I'd like to walk you through some of those today. So I'm going to share a screen with you here. And this is showing our webpage, our Money Mentor Resource Center, and the particular tools in the series of Your Money, Your Goals workshops and the Dealing with Debt tools. Now, rightly so, the first tool that the CFPB offers is their debt log. If you're going to try to address a problem, you normally have to figure out where your starting point is. This is like a journey. You can't plan the course of your journey without knowing where your starting point is. So the debt log that they offer is helps you to try to assemble what all of your debt issues are. And they give you some ways of thinking through this, figuring out where your debt is. Some of it might show up on a credit report. You might be able to get other information from credit card statements or other sources. But here they offer you a useful chart that you can fill in online and then include things like what's the monthly payment? Is the payment up to date or not? How much is left to pay? The interest rate, the payoff date, or the goal at when you want to get it paid off by. So you can fill this all out online and then print it out for yourself, which is a nice part of it. But the important thing about this tool is that it helps you figure out what your starting point is. Know how much debt that you've got, and get you to start thinking about how do you want to try tackling this. A very useful tool indeed. The second tool that they have is a debt to income calculator. And what that's going to be able to allow you to do is kind of measure your progress on paying off debt over time. It's hard to stay dedicated to something unless you can kind of measure progress. And so the debt to income calculator explains what debt to income ratio is, how it's a measure of the debt burden that you're carrying, how to calculate your debt to income ratio, and then you can kind of keep up with this over time to figure out how are you making progress on paying off that debt. And that's all very useful information. So you've got a starting point, you've got a way of measuring progress. The next thing that you need is a plan. And that's what they offer here as a debt action plan. The thing that you don't want to get in the habit of doing is making simply minimum payment on your debt. That's kind of a sucker's bet, because minimum payments are set low to make sure that you're paying a lot of finance charges over as long a period of time as possible. So what you've got to do is decide how can you free up some money in your budget and pay aggressively on some debts in order to pay them off more quickly. And this debt action plan explains that there are two general strategies that are typically used in aggressively paying off your debt. One is to pay the smallest debt off first. That is, you look at your total debts, what's the smallest balance that you have, and once you free up some money in your budget by maybe trimming back on some expenses, maybe raising income, then you go aggressively at that smaller balance account first. Once it's paid off, you take the money that you were applying towards that particular debt and you roll it over and start addressing the next largest debt, and then the next one, and you roll over into the next one. And so the real benefit of this is you get a sense of accomplishment as you're paying this debt off. You get to kind of pat yourself on the back and saying, things are getting done. I can see another one falling. I can roll that money over. And so that sort of reward keeps you motivated, keeps it possible for you to make those sacrifices that you're making along the way. And that's, of course, to your benefit. So that's one strategy. The alternative strategy is to pay the highest interest rate first. The accounts with the highest interest rate are costing you the most money. So if you pay those off more quickly, you're saving yourself more money over time. Now, is one strategy better than the other? No, they're really equally valid. It just kind of depends on what kind of person you are. Are you the kind of person that feels like you need to feel that sense of accomplishment on an ongoing basis? Then what you want to do is pay the smallest balance first. If, however, you're motivated by the knowledge that you're saving as much money as possible, then you might want to try to pay the highest interest rate first. But then this tool allows you to prioritize which debts you're paying most aggressively. So it's a good tool for that. I think a good sense of a good part of dealing with debt is understanding it in the first place. Make sure that you're getting as good a deal as possible when you're using credit, and understanding loans is really important. That's particularly important for large purchases like a car or a mortgage. And what the CFPB offers here is a comparing auto loans tool. And what this allows you to do is to give you a sense of what's open in negotiation in a auto loan. And then you can do a side-by-side comparison of different loans to see which offer might be best for you. You don't want to just necessarily take the credit offer that a dealership is offering you. You might want to look at your bank or other lenders as possible alternatives. And this worksheet helps you to kind of compare which is the best deal. And then this also gives you a way of determining how much you're going to pay out over the life of the loan, which is really important, because I think a lot of people get focused on just the short term. They're thinking, what's my monthly payment? And that's the only thing that they worry about. Well, you really also have to think about how much am I paying for this over the life of the loan. Unfortunately, all too often now people are getting caught up into 6- and 7-year vehicle loans. And that can be a real disadvantage. While it might be a slightly lower payment on the month-to-month basis, you'd be shocked at realizing how much more you're paying in finance charge over the life of that loan. So this worksheet gives you a sense of both the short term, what your monthly payment is going to be, and what your total payment is going to be as well. The CFPB also has tools like this for mortgage loans, but that's not a part of this series here. But it's a great tool that you might want to explore. A lot of people are burdened with student loans, and that's another sense of debt that people are trying to deal with. The CFPB has a repaying student loan portion as well. And I'd strongly, if you've got student loans, I'd encourage you to look this over. There are a variety of different options available to you, particularly if you have government student loans. With private loans, it's not quite as flexible. You might be able to refinance. But with government student loans, you have a number of different options: deferment options, forbearance options, income-driven repayment options. If you find that your current payment is an excessive burden, then perhaps you could explore an income-driven repayment plan where your payment on a monthly basis is not tied to the balance of your loan or to the interest rate, but rather is tied to what your income is. And these plans look at how much disposable income you have and look to apply a standard of maybe 10 to 15% of your disposable income as the monthly payment requirement. And for a lot of people who are struggling with their mortgage or with their student loan payments, it's a very useful option. But this tool that the CFPB offers you helps you explore what your current situation is and what options might be available to you. It gives you a comparison of different repayment plans, from the standard, the graduated, and extended repayment plans to the various income-driven repayment plans that are available as well. It explains deferment and forbearance. Some people get offered deferments by their loan servicers, and it's not always in your best interest. While it can put off making payments, you got to recognize that finance charges are still being assessed, and so your loan is growing. If you are in real difficult financial situation, then you might look at what an income-driven repayment plan would do, because it's possible that the required payment on your loan might be as little as $5 or even $0 per month, but each month you're making that payment, you're fulfilling your obligation. There are instances of loan forgiveness, and that can be explored. It is kind of tightly restricted, but it's possible. And some people might be interested in the public service loan forgiveness program. So if you work for a nonprofit or a government entity, it's possible that if you make payments over a 10-year period, actually 120 payments, then any remaining loan balance you have is forgiven. And that's all explained here or through the link that they provide. So student loan debt might be an issue for you. A good explanation of that in the tool that they offer you. If you've gotten behind and you've got collectors calling you from collection agencies, it can be a really difficult situation. There might be kind of a dangerous mix of fear and anger and shame that all kind of fits together and makes it more and more difficult for you to really address the issues. Unfortunately, debt collectors kind of play on those fears and make it even more difficult for you, pressuring you into making payments that you can't really afford. But the CFPB's When Debt Collectors Call tool is useful because it explains what your rights are as a consumer, that you don't have to be the punching bag of some collector, that you do have rights and you do have the right to get explanations. We think that people should pay their debts as best they can, but they shouldn't be forced to pay debts that they don't owe. So one of the things that this particular tool gives you is a way of contacting the creditor or the collection agency and confirming that in fact this is a debt that you owe and that the amount that they're requesting is legitimate. And so they gave you some useful questions that you might want to ask the debt collector. And they also give you a number of useful letter templates that you can use. And you can just kind of fill those in, print them out, and send those to the debt collector and get information that you need. And so you want to make sure that they have the authority to collect the debt, that the debt is legitimately owed. You even have the right to tell collectors not to contact you anymore. And that's all explained in this link here. So another useful tool on helping to deal with debt. The final tool that's provided here is avoiding medical debt. And that may or may not be an issue for you, medical debt. But kind of explains how you dispute medical debt, how you review medical bills, and what you can do if you feel like you don't owe the debt, and how you can get financial assistance or support. One of the things to keep in mind is that in the state of Arkansas, the statute of limitations on the collectability of medical debt is just 2 years. So that if the medical provider hasn't collected any money from you for 2 years, and they try to take you to court in order to get a judgment against you, to garnish wages or attach your bank account, if it's been more than 2 years, you can show up to court. You can explain to the judge that this is time-barred debt. That's time-barred debt because it's beyond the statute of limitations for the collectability of the debt, and that collection agency will not be able to get a judgment against you. Now, that doesn't mean you don't owe the debt anymore. Legitimately, you do owe the debt, but the tools that they have to collect it from you are pretty much minimized. The debt can also continue to stay on your credit report for 7 years from the date of last activity, from when it originally started. But at least you don't have to worry about wages being garnished or your bank account being drained. That's for medical debt. The statute is 2 years. On contract debt, like credit cards, it's a 5-year statute of limitations. Again, that doesn't make the debt go away. It just means that if you are summoned to court, you can show up and you can protect yourself. If you don't show up, they can get a summary judgment and end up with a garnishment in place. So you do have to respond. You have to be responsible on this. So medical debt can be an issue, but this tool is beneficial in helping you explain some of your rights. Debt seems to be almost an inevitable part of life. We have aspirations. There's things that we want to achieve. We can't always do that with the resources we have at hand. Using credit in order to get access to goods and services can be a smart thing, but you don't want to get in over your head. And if you do find yourself in over your head, you want to develop a strategy to get out of that. These tools, I think, are really useful, help you to deal with that. Keep in mind that CCOA and other professionals are here to help you as well. Thanks.